Okay, so you know how you're walking through the grocery store,
Right.
right? And you're looking at all the produce,
Yeah.
and you're like, organic, non-organic.
Right.
What's the deal? Does it even matter?
Right. It's like the question of the century, I think.
It feels like it. Like,
Yeah.
are we actually getting more bang for our buck when we go with that organic stuff? Or is it all just, marketing hype?
Yeah. It's tough to know for sure, right? Like, we want to make the best choices for our health, but there's so much information out there, it can be overwhelming.
Absolutely. So, well, what we're going to do today is dive into a study that looked right at this organic versus non-organic.
Ooh, interesting.
It was published in a journal called Plants back in 2023, and they called it Organic versus Non-Organic Plant-Based Foods Terry, Comparative Study on Phenolic Content and Antioxidant Capacity.
Okay, so they're getting right into the science here. Phenolic content, antioxidant capacity. Sounds a little bit like, textbook stuff.
It does. So our goal today is to break that down for you. Like, what did they actually find, and what does it mean for us when we're standing there in the produce aisle?
Exactly. Like, we don't want to get lost in the weeds with the technical jargon.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
So to start, let's define some terms.
Okay, sounds good.
The researchers were looking at these things called phenolic compounds, which sounds pretty complex.
It does, but it's actually pretty simple. Think of phenolic compounds like the plant's little bodyguards, like their own defense system.
Interesting.
Yeah, they protect them from like bugs and harsh weather and things like that. And the really cool part is that when we eat those plants, those same compounds, those phenolic compounds, can actually act as antioxidants in our bodies.
So they protect the plants and they protect us.
Exactly, like a 2-for-1 deal.
Okay, that's awesome. Now, when we talk about antioxidant capacity, what are we actually talking about? Like, what does that even mean?
So basically, antioxidant capacity is the power of these compounds and other things to fight off these harmful substances in our bodies called free radicals. Free radicals can kind of mess with our cells, cause damage, and antioxidants come in and neutralize them.
So it's like a cleanup crew, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're going in and cleaning up all the mess that those free radicals are making.
That's a great analogy. I love that.
Okay.
Okay, so this study measured the levels of those, cleanup crew compounds in a bunch of different organic and non-organic foods. So what kind of stuff were they actually looking at?
They had a good mix going on, 13 different plant-based foods in total.
Wow.
So they had some fruits, olives, oranges, sweet cherries. Oh, and 2 different types of tomatoes too, which is interesting.
Yeah, like different varieties.
Yeah, exactly. And then for veggies, they had onions, sweet peppers, and Swiss chard.
Nice.
They even threw in some nuts, almonds, hazelnuts, 2 different varieties of hazelnuts, actually, and walnuts. And then just to round things out, they had a legume, carob pods.
Carob pods. Wow. That's,
It's an interesting choice, right? Like, I don't think I've ever had a carob pod in my life.
I don't think I have either. Okay, so they've got their foods. They got both organic and non-organic versions of each. They're analyzing them. What did they find? Like, what was the main takeaway? Was there a clear winner, organic versus non-organic?
That's the thing. There wasn't a clear-cut winner. Like, it wasn't as simple as saying organic is better or non-organic is the way to go. What they found was that it really depends on the specific plant. Like, whether organic or non-organic had more of those good compounds, those phenolics and antioxidants.
Okay, so no easy answer then.
Nope, not at all. And even within the same plant, like different varieties, like those different types of tomatoes and hazelnuts they looked at, even those showed differences. So it's way more nuanced than we might think.
So it seems like the biggest takeaway here is that we can't just make blanket statements. Like, we can't assume all organic is better or all non-organic is worse.
Exactly. It's not black and white. We got to look at it on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, that makes sense. But they did find some patterns, right? You mentioned vegetables earlier.
Right, yeah. They noticed that with vegetables, there was a pretty clear difference between the organic and non-organic options.
Okay, so what was the difference there?
They saw that the organic veggies generally had a higher antioxidant capacity and most of those phenolic compounds they were measuring.
So like more of that cleanup crew overall.
Yeah, exactly. Specifically, they found higher levels of these things called total phenolics and anthocyanins in the organic vegetables.
Okay, now we talked about phenolics earlier,
Right.
but what about those anthocyanins? What are those exactly?
Anthocyanins are pigments. They're what give a lot of fruits and veggies their color, like those rich reds and purples and blues.
Oh, like blueberries and red cabbage?
Yeah, exactly. Like all those vibrant colors you see. And they also act as antioxidants.
So they're pretty awesome little compounds.
They are. And the organic vegetables in this study, they tended to have more of those colorful protective compounds.
Okay, so organic vegetables seem to have a slight advantage in that regard.
Yeah.
But were there any exceptions to that? Like any places where non-organic came out on top?
There were, and these exceptions are important because they really show us that we can't oversimplify things. So they found that oranges and one specific type of tomato they studied called Torres, those show differences across all the different things they were measuring. And get this, the non-organic Taurus tomatoes actually had higher levels of those compounds and antioxidant capacity than the organic ones.
Wow, so the non-organic actually beat out the organic in that case.
Yeah, which is super interesting. It really just highlights how we can't make those sweeping generalizations.
No, definitely not. So even within the same type of plant, different varieties might respond differently to organic versus non-organic farming.
Exactly. And they actually specifically mentioned that in the study, that even just different cultivars, like those two types of hazelnuts, they can respond differently to the farming method. It's not just about organic versus non-organic. The specific plant itself plays a big role.
It's fascinating, like how much variation there can be. Now, was there anything about this study that we should be aware of? Any limitations they pointed out?
Yeah, there was one main limitation. They mentioned that they didn't go super deep into identifying every single type of phenolic compound. Like, they measured those broad categories, but they didn't pinpoint each individual one and how much it was affected by the farming method.
So they couldn't say this specific phenolic compound is higher in organic, for example.
Right, exactly. But it still gives us a lot of really good information to consider.
Definitely. So overall, what was the main message about health that came out of the study's conclusions?
Well, the good news is they emphasize that eating plant-based foods, whether they're organic or non-organic, is beneficial for us. Like all those antioxidants and stuff can help reduce our risk of getting certain diseases, when we're eating a balanced diet. So the message is still eat your fruits and veggies.
Yeah, that's a classic message, but it's always good to be reminded. Now, you mentioned carrot pods earlier.
Oh, yeah, those are pretty interesting.
So what did they find with those?
But the organic and non-organic caropods, they had the highest levels of total phenolic content, total flavonthreols, which is another type of phenolic compound, and antioxidant capacity out of all the foods they tested.
Seriously, they were like the all-star.
Yeah, pretty much. And the non-organic caropods, they actually had the highest level of these things called total flavonols, which are another type of antioxidant.
Wow, so carrot pods seem like they pack a real punch.
They do.
Maybe we should all start adding them to our smoothies or something.
Yeah, maybe, although I'm not sure how they taste.
That's true. Okay, and what about Swiss chard? What did they find with that?
The Swiss chard was pretty interesting. They found that the organic Swiss chard had 1.3-fold higher ORAC levels than the non-organic.
Okay, break that down for me. What does 1.3-fold higher actually mean in simpler terms?
It basically means it had about a third more antioxidant capacity. So for Swiss chard, at least in this study, the organic version seemed to have a bigger advantage.
Okay, so a measurable difference.
Yeah, definitely.
So if we had to boil this whole deep dive down to one key takeaway, what would you say it is?
Well, I think the main thing is that the relationship between how a plant is farmed organic or non-organic and how many of those beneficial compounds it has, it's really complicated. And it depends on the specific food.
It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Exactly. But the good news is eating a variety of plant-based foods, whether they're organic or non-organic, is still super good for us.
Right, because they all have those antioxidants and nutrients.
Exactly. And if you want a specific example to take away from this study, remember the Swiss chard. The organic Swiss chard in this research, it had 1.3 times the antioxidant capacity, or about 30% more than the non-organic Swiss chard.
Okay, so that's something concrete we can remember.
Yeah, definitely.
So this has been super interesting. It makes you think, when you're making choices at the grocery store, what are the most important factors for you? Like, is it just about those antioxidant levels, or are you thinking about things like pesticides, the environmental impact, or cost?
It's a really good point. Like, what are your priorities?
Yeah, what matters most to you? That's
Yes.
definitely something to think about. Well, this has been a really eye-opening deep dive. Thanks so much for breaking all of this down for us.
No problem. Always happy to chat about food and health.
I think it's something we all need to be thinking about more. So thanks again, and to all of you listening, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep making those informed choices about what you eat.
Exactly.
Until next time.
See ya.